By the mid-1970s, a new breed of university-trained filmmakers was changing the shape of the movie industry. But it would be a modest, soft-spoken Californian named George Lucas who would shake up Hollywood like never before.
I got a call from Jeff Berg, an agent who was representing George Lucas at the time, and he said, there's a picture called American Graffiti, and I'd like you to take a look at it. But I was so impressed by the picture, I then called Jeff and I said I'd like to meet with George.
In 1973, the young director met with Alan Ladd Jr. to pitch an idea for a motion picture. It would be a sprawling, epic adventure about the struggle between good and evil, set in the vast reaches of outer space. Star Wars.
I would say probably the original impetus for the whole thing was Flash Gordon. I used to love that. So I went off and wrote my own space opera and developed the story and took it to United Artists that had the first rights to it. They said no, they didn't want it. And I took it to Universal because I just finished American Graffiti, and they said no, they didn't want it. And finally took it to 20th Century Fox, and Alan Ladd Jr. said, I'm interested.
But even before Fox had committed to financing the nearly $10 million picture, illustrator Ralph McQuarrie was brought on board to create visual renderings of Lucas's exotic universe. In March 1976, principal photography on Star Wars began in Tunisia. Eventually moving on to Elstree Studios just outside of London.
Okay, cut it. And. Oh!
The mic was in frame.
The mic was in picture.
Oh.
The mic was in picture.
The
mic was in picture.
Everyone back to first position.
The sound department has to pay us.
Of course, no one involved with the production had any idea they were making movie history.
No one really knew what George Lucas had in his head, and once they saw what he had in his head, they didn't really understand the strength of its appeal.
On May 25th, 1977, Star Wars opened in 32 selected theaters, and a phenomenon was born.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
Han Solo.
I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you.
Will somebody get this big walking carpet out of my way?
Well, I think Star Wars is such a success because it gave us a glowing array of characters that we could really identify with. No! Once you get characters you don't forget, why you like to come back and see them do their tricks over and over again.
George Lucas relied on classic themes of mythology. It's not accidental that Star Wars speaks so strongly to people.
You're coming in too fast!
Star Wars became a movie event the likes of which Hollywood had never seen, quickly shattering every box office record.
Still, even the day it came out and Laddie called me and says, it's a hit, it's a hit. You know, the first 3 performances sold out, it's going to be giant. I said, look, all science fiction films do well in the first week. Wait until the 3rd week, and then let's see what happens. So I was always the pessimist.
But the force was with Star Wars in ways far beyond box office receipts. Sales of merchandise surpassed anything the industry had seen before. With the success of Star Wars, George Lucas immediately began production on the sequel, The Empire Strikes Back.
By the time he made the second film, he was already dissatisfied with what he'd done in the first one. He felt it looked primitive compared to what they were able to do in Empire Strikes Back.
There is no escape. Don't make me destroy you. You do not yet realize your importance. Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father.
He told me enough. He told me you killed him.
No. I am your father. No! Together, we can rule the galaxy as father and son.
Released in 1980, it was among the most highly anticipated motion pictures since Gone with the Wind. Produced at a cost of 3 times that of its predecessor, The Empire Strikes Back grossed more than $200 million worldwide, joining Star Wars among the top 10 box office champs. The third installment of what was now being heralded as the Star Wars trilogy was released 2 years later. The Return of the Jedi featured staggering visuals, dozens of new alien creatures, and as in the first 2 outings, a spectacular musical score by John Williams. In